My name is Hugh Bradshaw. I'm the Employment Services Manager at Voc Rehab Vermont, and I have been involved for the past several years in developing and implementing a progressive employment model here in Vermont. We've found it to be tremendously successful, and we're hoping to share that with other states. Progressive employment really is a strategy to help us engage with business, but also to really offer our customers an opportunity to explore different industries, explore different career options in a low risk, no risk environment. So it's as much about reducing the perceived risk on the part of the business around hiring a person with a disability, but also in many cases it's around addressing some of the concerns a person may have around their ability to do a job, whether they have the experience or the skills, and oftentimes even around environment. Is this a work environment that will work for me? So the beauty of progressive employment is really it gives us a mechanism to, in various doses, so to speak, an opportunity to get into a workplace and really find out where that match might be. We had talked to employers over the years. We certainly knew that there was some resistance or fear really around hiring people with disabilities. And we had done disability etiquette workshops, disability awareness workshops with businesses, and really to no real effect. And so we began to think about, is there another strategy we can use to introduce people to businesses and really get them to know individuals rather than labels or disability labels? And that's where we began to talk about progressive employment options, things like informational interviews, job shadows, work experiences, really mechanisms to have a person experience a workplace, have an employer experience the individual, and really to look at where those matches might be, as I mentioned. So we began by building a small budget for progressive employment that all of our counselors, our employment staff, and our community partners who are providing employment services are able to access. We started with a fairly small amount of money. It was only about $60,000, and then when the Recovery Act came in place, we had additional funds, and we put a significant portion of those funds, about $400,000, into this pool of money to be used specifically for progressive employment. We began to track that. We developed a mechanism to track those expenditures so that we could tie the progressive employment activities to employment outcomes. And what we began to find was we were using this initially specifically for very tough cases, people who we were having trouble placing, who may have been on caseloads for a long period of time, and where we really felt that they were stuck. And we found that people who engaged in progressive employment activities were getting jobs, and the employers were happy. It gave them an opportunity in a low-risk way to meet an individual, but it also was moving our candidates forward in employment. And so the core underpinnings of progressive employment are really twofold. One is to address fears, both on the part of the business and on the part of the individual candidate, but also around momentum, and momentum in terms of starting with some baby steps and moving forward from there, giving a person the opportunity to try something and go easy and slowly and make sure it works for them. And likewise for the business. The business understands there's no commitment to hire, that this is just an opportunity to help a person build their skills or to gain work experience. And that low risk notion is very attractive to businesses. They're somewhat used to it because of the staffing industry. The staffing industry has done temp to perm placements for years, and they're very familiar with that model, and we're essentially co-opting that model, offering it free of charge and introducing it to businesses, which has been tremendously successful. We know that our outcomes are going up as a result of these progressive employment activities, and indeed we're using it for tougher cases. I think there's some data around outcomes being better for individuals who participate in progressive employment. And at the end of the day, I would argue that progressive employment really is the ultimate consumer choice model, where we are able to help people chase their dreams. If they're interested in a particular field, we can say, okay, let's do a work experience in that field and let's see what it looks like. One thing to note is progressive employment here in Vermont, we've used not only for our VR customers, but also for other populations. We have an initiative across our Agency of Human Services called Creative Workforce Solutions, and we have been using progressive employment for various other populations, including TANF participants. In our state, it's called Reach Up, traditionally known as welfare. We use it quite a bit for people coming out of our correctional system. Oftentimes businesses are very wary of hiring a person coming out of corrections. But we've used this model to place sex offenders into jobs, people with serious felony records into jobs. We've also used this for new Americans, refugees who resettle in Vermont, and in particular in Burlington, Vermont. And across all of these populations, we've seen similar results, that it leverages people into work and really gives them an opportunity to move forward in their lives. It's amazing to watch how people bloom and blossom as a result of progressive employment. We see people going into a work experience very shy and withdrawn and low self-esteem, and we find that as the progression goes, they become more and more self-confident. The business begins to really value them as a worker, and it converts to employment in many, many cases, which is very exciting.